Hello friends, this is Manuel here, and I wanted to welcome you to the study of stuff. Before we get to my very first interview, I wanted to say a few words. The study of stuff is comprised of two segments. One, the album, which is part podcast, old school radio show, music album, variety show full of skits. Kind of think of it as Sesame Street, The Muppet Show, Frank Zappa, Tom Waits, Knucklebear, Monty Python, Alan Watts, George Carlin, of course, all mixed together in a blender. And then there's the second segment. That's the interview portion. That's where I interview public figures, authors, thinkers, artists, and so on and so forth. And we discuss many different types of subjects. Anything from geopolitics, physics, history, alt history, metaphysics, spirituality, philosophy, psychology, archaeology, conspiracy theory, the occult, etc. Visit my website, manoelia.com, to stay up to date with all things study of stuff. Now, lay back, sit back, whatever you prefer, and listen to my interview with the great David Whitehead, the Truth Warrior. Now, David and myself, we have a great discussion. I really had a great time and honored to have been able to have David as my very first guest. Now, I am a little nervous. You'll notice that in the beginning, but it's okay. It's my first episode. But I think it turned out great. I learned quite a bit, and I hope you do too. Now, without further ado, here's my interview. My first interview with the great David Whitehead. All right, and we are live. My dear friends, welcome to the study of stuff. This is the very, very, very first episode of the podcast version of the overall show, and where I interview individuals, public figures around the world who kind of reflect the stuff I like to study, hence the name of the show, Study of Stuff. But one of the big reasons why I started the study of stuff, this interview segment, is for the newbies out there. You know, I got a lot of requests from friends out there who are kind of entering the world of, let's call it the alternative, and kind of need a little bit of guidance. So I tried my best to kind of send them to this podcast and read this book and so on and so forth. Bottom line is they wanted a little bit more guidance. So I thought I'd try to help out, and I try to get individuals out there who are knowledgeable in the areas that I'm going to be studying, to have them give you a little bit of insight on how you can kind of walk the plane, this plane of odd information that's out there. Anyways, that was kind of sloppy as an intro, but it'll get better as I keep doing this. Don't you damn worry. My very first guest.
You did good, man.
Oh, thanks, dude. Thanks. My very, very, very first guest is David Whitehead. There he is, the Truth Warrior. Now, who is David Whitehead? Well, first, I want to start off by saying he's a father and a husband. I think we overlook that sometimes, how important that role is. And I can relate. I'm also a father and husband. And I think that's an extremely important role. So I'm going to put that as your first achievement in life.
He's also it's a big one. Thank you.
He's also a martial artist, a podcaster, of course, a researcher in the area of the fringe. He covers many topics, from philosophy, history, geopolitics, consciousness, one of my favorites, why I got into the whole deal myself, ufology, archaeology. He's a host of his own podcast, The Truth Warrior, as well as the Unslaved podcast, which we might talk a little bit about. Definitely, that's an institution. People need to know about that podcast. They need to know about both podcasts. I like how you break up how you present the information, both on your own and with Michael. He's also he's been on many shows: Ancient Aliens, Unexplained, In Search of Monsters. I remember that one.
That was just for fun. We just did that one for fun. Yeah.
I really did like that though. And Oak Island. Yeah. The Knights Templar. Maybe we'll get to the Knights Templar. Who knows?
Some interesting stuff.
But martial artist, I think that's an important thing to talk about, being that your name is the Truth Warrior, and it seems that that's a path you've chosen, or chose you to kind of step on this journey from the aspect and perspective of a warrior. And one of my favorites, of course.
Oh, there it is. Classic. Good man.
Very good man. Great book. And I know he's been a big mentor for you in your life.
Yes.
So, Dave, I'd like to open everything up for you to speak for a little bit, because I've been talking for a little bit too long. I want to know, who's Dave, how this all began, how did you end up where you are today, and kind of help guide those that are new by showing them examples of how you came into the alternative and some of the stumbling blocks, some of the things that woke you up.
Well, Mano, first of all, thanks for having me and congrats on the new podcast. We need as many people out there that care about truth, freedom, and justice as possible. And so the fact that you're doing this show speaks volumes. So glad to be here. And thanks to everybody that's watching for listening in. I'm going to warn everybody, I'm not an expert. I'm not somebody that has PhDs on my wall. I'm not somebody that, is traditionally educated or any of these kinds of things. I'm just somebody that is very curious about the many mysteries of life, about this world, about our reality. And I've been on a lifelong quest to try to answer some of my own questions that just kept coming up for me personally. And I've had quite an interesting road and have ran into some very, very interesting people that have inspired me, changed my life, taught me incredible things. And I feel like now my work is to just sort of pay that forward because it's been such a benefit to me. It's been a guiding light in my life, this research and the martial arts and everything together. And, I've been doing this research. I've always been somebody that's been a bit of a black sheep, out there researching outside the box, had the questions. My hand was always the one that was up first. I just had I have an insatiable curiosity. And it all started as a passion, as just, I want to learn about the history of the big questions of life. Who are we? Why are we here? Where are we going? How did the world get to be the way that it is? What's do good and evil exist? How do they work in our lives? And then eventually it evolves into what's the truth about religion, mythology, ancient history. I mean, that was huge for me. Always fascinated with like Indiana Jones and X-Files and all that stuff. And then also in the background, the martial arts thing. And I'd been training martial arts since I was 9 years old. I think I was inspired by just watching some little clips of Bruce Lee and watching Ninja Turtles and, all that good stuff. And just kind of was like, well, I want to do that. There was something powerful about the martial arts. And I got to see a local presentation by some karate black belts at one of the events in my local town when I was a kid. And I remember just looking at them and they didn't seem arrogant. They weren't big people. They were just small people that were incredibly technical and powerful and graceful in their movements. And they performed these incredible things. And I was just like, wow, that is amazing. And it stuck with me and I wanted that. And I realized that what I was seeking was I wanted to better learn about myself. I wanted to learn about my strengths and weaknesses. I wanted to find that potential inside me and find a way to bring it out into the world. And martial arts just spoke to me. I was also, like a lot of kids, you go through when you're a little bit weird. I was a bit of an oddball as a kid, I guess, reading books all the time. And so you get bullied and whatnot. And I thought, I better get some spine. I better learn how to knock somebody out if I'm going to keep having this kind of life. So eventually my parents finally let me go and start training. I had been training on my own. I just went to the library and was getting all these books and just trying to do my best to learn what I could. And eventually they're like, okay, he's going to hurt himself. So let's just put him in something. And then my martial art career began and I've trained in, so many different styles. I've done it my whole life. It's a passion. Eventually, I've achieved many black belts and did lots of competing and lots of instructing, and then opened up my own dojo. My wife and I opened that up together, and we ran that dojo for probably about 12 years. We started in Toronto and then eventually migrated out west to Western Canada. And then that dojo got shut down at the beginning of the pandemic. So here I am. And in the background of doing my martial art and fitness health career, I kept my research going, and I would sneak off to these events where they would have all these speakers there, and I would go try to meet and greet everybody. And then eventually I got together with a buddy of mine, Chris from Toronto, and we did our own tour that we called the Modern Knowledge Tour, where we went across Canada. We traveled across doing events and bringing speakers in to talk about various things, and just always been into this stuff. And I had many life-changing moments throughout the process of exploring these questions that we're going to get into today. Yep. And I got to the point where I said, okay, I've been reading all these books. I've been watching all these presentations. I grew up watching debates between different intellectuals. And it reminded me of like watching like a UFC or a boxing match or something. Yes. You got these two prize fighters going at it. And I felt like that was valuable to me because I just cared about what the truth was. because of the martial art background and the research I did into the warrior philosophy,
Yep.
I realized that in that philosophy, truth is the highest concern because it's life or death. If you're wrong and you believe a lie about yourself or about the situation you're in, you're dead. There's no room for bullshit. There's no room for writing everything on a whiteboard. It's all about, you talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? Can you prove yourself? And in that world, there's very little room for nonsense, even though there is still a lot of nonsense flying around in that world. It seems to be a place, at least in the original intention, where you could explore the truth. I've often called the dojo like a scientific lab where everybody comes in from different backgrounds and they all think about martial arts or whatever in a certain way. But then it's all about, okay, let's train it. Let's practice it. Let's test it. Let's see if what we're believing about this technique or this situation is true. Are our responses correct? So I just always had that installed in me, that if we're going to talk about any of these subjects, there's room for exploration. There's room for theorizing. There's room for making mistakes. There's room for all these different things. But the end goal has to be the truth.
Yes.
It has to be, because if it's not, then we're getting in our own way and we're going to end up not being able to see the forest from the trees. And there are, as we're seeing now, this isn't just an interesting study. This has now become extremely relevant in our lives,
Yes.
where if our whole society is being led by the nose and or not but even just factions of society, if it starts to fall apart because we're believing lies or we're operating off of poor belief systems, then the consequences of that are just, they're obvious, they're blatant, and they're massive. The implications are massive. So this became it was started as a passion and it became an imperative. And so I started doing some shows back in the day. I started just kind of recording myself, just like you're doing now, doing video logs, or I would contact an author or a speaker that inspired me. And if they got back to me, I'd record a conversation and put it up on my YouTube channel. That channel has since been canceled, as are many of my other channels.
I'm so disappointed because I tried to send someone that UN documentary you had done a while back on YouTube, and I'm like, where the fuck did it go? And I was like, a couple of weeks ago. Oh, like, they took them down. Anyway,
they did, man. Oh yeah, no, I got nailed from YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah,
probably a bunch of other ones. But you can catch me now. I'm still on Twitter. I don't know why they didn't hit me there. They've definitely shadow banned me. I lost more than half my followers for some reason.
yep.
You can follow me on TikTok. Oh, cool. You can follow me on TikTok. I'm there right now, as long as I can be there. I'm on all the alternative platforms like Telegram, Gab, etc. We can get into that later. But the main point of where I came to was that I knew that we were dealing with a massive situation that I think a lot of people couldn't quite grasp, because it took me years to understand all this stuff. Years. And I still trying to understand it. Like, I feel like the more I've learned, the more I don't know, the more questions I'm given. And I think that's valuable. I think that scares a lot of people, because people like to walk around with this belief that they know it all and everything's totally cool. And there's this illusion of security. You know what I mean? The illusion of security. I guess in my world, from the warrior tradition, from the research tradition, there's no room for illusory feelings of security. You have to know yourself. You have to know for sure what's going on. Key. Right? Yeah. So that's the basis of what I'm trying to do with my work. Is you don't have to buy into every theory I have or idea that I have or whatever, but I do present sourced, researched information in a careful, methodical presentation. I bring on guests from different backgrounds that are not, like, I talk to just average Joes, but I also talk to highly esteemed intellectuals, experts on different fields. And it's an alternative perspective. And the reason it's valuable, even if people don't buy every little thing, is it's valuable to look outside of the box. I think everybody can agree. Like, we don't have to agree on everything, but we should agree that if we want to have a free society, we should have the freedom to think. And if we're going to have the freedom to think and explore these questions, then we need the freedom to speak. And if we don't have the freedom to speak, then we don't have the freedom to critique and to challenge and to ask very important questions of those that hold the position of authority over the truth, rather than putting the truth as the authority, as Gerald Massey would say. And so for me, being a critic, a true critic, I love these debunkers and Snopes.com, and they like to pretend they're they're the ones that are critiquing society, or they're the critical thinkers. They're not critical at all. Real critical thinkers challenge the status quo. They don't agree with the status quo automatically. Okay. And so my job on my show is to say, hey, there's many other ways to look at the world. There's a lot of other brilliant, highly intellectual and intelligent people that you've never even heard of before. Why is that? Wouldn't you want to know, okay, what did Nikola Tesla say versus what did Thomas Edison say? What did Wilhelm Reich say versus this guy? What is this philosopher over here? He's a Stoic. Okay, what's he saying in terms of some other type of philosophy, right? And
I
it's this,
fully
it's
agree
the
with that.
same in the martial art world. Like I want to know, what's the karate guy saying? What's the boxer saying? What's the jiu-jitsu guy saying? It's valuable to look at the whole package.
I fully agree. Well put, and I really adore your philosophy. It's similar to mine and anyone else I respect. It brings to mind the whole concept of what Jeet Kune Do was about. It was about taking the good and expelling the bad, incorporating that into your ideology, your belief system, your philosophy, and then using that to go forth and do what you need to do. But do it with knowing that if you talk shit, you're gonna get knocked out. You know what I mean? That's a possibility, and at all times you got to be prepared for that. And then you brought up a lot of good points about. Oftentimes we'll take one thinker and then put a spotlight on them, but then we'll ignore, like, you'll have the Edison. You gave the Edison example versus Tesla, and oftentimes we put emphasis on Edison and we don't really realize the gifts Tesla has brought us. And then in the history of alternative research, it wasn't very popular at one point to be talking about Tesla. Most people didn't even know who he was.
Yeah,
Like
that's
I'm
true.
sure you remember those days.
Yep.
Walter Russell, Victor Schauberger.
Oh yeah.
They're individuals that have changed, that could have changed more of what we view as reality. And I think you nailed it right there by saying that it's got to be an integrated approach where we take many things. And honestly, I think you've done a great job with both podcasts, and you it's an institution, and I sell your podcast in that manner because you just go to the show notes and everything he said, call him out. Like, go click on the link and then check out the article he referenced. I mean, the individuals you've interviewed are immense. I mean, Richard Dolan's. I remember that video I'd seen years ago of you teaching him how to do the nunchucks. Do you remember that?
That was fun. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
like,
it was
Richard
fun.
Dolan's, Ralph Ellis, G. Edward Griffin, Michael Reckenwald. That was a great interview, and you kind of cover Ben Stewart, Matt Presti talking about Walter Russell. But anyways, to get back to you, could you kind of think back to when you first began this journey, when you kind of realized, hey, shit may not be as they told me? Was there like an incident, a piece of information, something that made you go, huh? And then kind of look into it? For example, for me, I remember grade 8 economics, and then they were explaining to me the Federal Reserve. And at one point, it was kind of glossed over really quickly. I'm like, what? Federal Reserve Act? They're just making money out of what? Like, they're not basing it on anything? And that was like the first thing. Like, years later, I get to Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin, and I'm like, that's what this fucking shit, that's why they overlooked it. They didn't want me to ask any questions. So was there a moment like that for you?
Yeah, that's a good one, man. And by the way, that the things you've referenced there, I can tell you're very well read on this. So good for you, man. So yeah, for me, it wasn't just one thing; it was a series of things. I think it started for me. I had a deep interest when I was young into religion and mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And my first question, because my parents raised me in a very traditional Baptist upbringing, okay? And I had a lot of questions because it was very much not necessarily from them, but from the churches we would go to. There was a lot of guilt-ridden stuff, a lot of threatening of hellfire, damnation, a lot of stuff that just seemed contradictory to me. And I don't know why everybody else around me was just totally in it, and I'm like, what, really? Like, there was just too many questions that I had, and so I just kept that as a private inquiry because it actually started to torment me. And I spent the time then going, well, you know what? I want to see what other brands of Christianity are talking about. Because why are there so many different brands of this same religion that apparently is supposed to be sourced from one single reference, right? Why is it so splintered? Because, a church divided against itself isn't a church at all, is it? So I went and started going, well, what are these other Christians saying? And then I went, well, let's zoom out a little bit more. And I'm going to go, I know a guy up the street who's a Buddhist. I'm going to go talk to that guy and ask him some of these questions. And then I knew a guy who was a Jewish rabbi. I'm going to talk to that guy. And then I went and I spent a lot of time just kind of going, I would ask these people different questions. Jehovah's Witnesses would show up at my door, or some Mormons. I would open the door. I remember even being like 13 years old and being like, hey, I'll talk to you. I just have questions. I want to know where you guys are coming from. And I've just always had this curiosity to go, I want to know why people are so assured of their position no matter where we go. We could talk to atheists. We could talk to, like, in terms of the big questions of life, everybody's just as convinced that they're right and everybody else is wrong. So for me, that was the first thing. Was I'm like, okay, well, if we're all operating under the pretense on this world that we're all right and everybody else is wrong, no wonder this world is plagued with war, right? No wonder we can't find peace on this planet, is because we're divided by ideas. So someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first waking up to, I think, the process of trying to figure out what the truth is and not just accepting what everybody out there was telling me. And then Bruce Lee changed my life, because just some little writings that he had were all about, like what you were saying, take what is useful, get rid of what isn't useful, make something uniquely your own. Don't just follow the crowd. Be your own self, have your own belief, have your own connection to God, have your own style of martial arts. Something about that it gave me goosebumps. It even gives me goosebumps now. And so that was the premise. And then fast forward, I kept kind of doing all that research. I got really interested in like ufology and some of those paranormal subjects. Just always, I don't know what it was. They're literally my favorite subjects. Like, it's just so fascinating, right? And I know there's a lot of bullshit surrounding it, but there's also a lot of truth in there. There's a lot of stuff it's just mind blowing. So I was always collecting that stuff, and it was like a hobby. It was just like a hobby, a vocation. And then I met my wife, who I met her when I was 19, and she was in political science and she was doing media studies. And it was such a good combination, because I was coming from like martial arts, philosophy, deep thinking, UFOs. Oh, what the hell is this planet? And my wife was very to the ground, like, hey, don't trust the media, Dave. They're probably lying to you. And maybe we should look at the political angle of things, because that plays into all this, doesn't it? And she was the one kind of reminding me to, hey, keep your feet on the ground too. And then 9/11 happened. And I remember where I was. I was working night shift, running cable networking through government buildings in Ottawa. I was just a night shift job, work with a bunch of contractors. And they shut.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, I was 2001. So what was I, 20, 21? Okay. I'm 38 now. 22? I was 19. My wife is doing the math for me. She's here for the math, okay?
That's awesome. And kudos 19, to her. Kudos to her.
He's saying kudos to you. So yeah, I was like 19, 20, and this thing happens, and I didn't catch on to it right away, but something felt weird, and it felt weird for everybody, because they started locking all the government buildings down, and we lost our work for like 2 months. And during that time, I was looking for another job and still training at my local dojo, and then started talking to people. And I think it was her sister. I think it was my sister-in-law that sent us Loose Change. And she's like, you got to check this out. Loose Change. And so I watched Loose Change, and then I went, oh my God, like there's something. I didn't know if everything in the film was right or not. I just knew there was some pieces in there that were just, Building 7. It was undebunkable. Building 7, like, and all the squid. And I went, okay, at the very least, we got to question this, because if they lied to us about the event, why would they lie to us, right? Yeah. And so that became another driving question, was if I could find even one lie, like bold-faced, they know they're doing it, lie, not a mistake, just an actual lie. If I could find one lie in that story or any other story, why would I trust anything else these people are telling me?
Bravo.
Like, right? Why would I just go along with, and at least, and even if people are going to say, well, maybe they have to lie for your own good, or whatever stupid crap people tell themselves so they sleep at night. Even I would say, well, you wouldn't trust them without a little bit of doubt, right? Like if I lied to you once and you went, that was a lie, you lied to me, and that there's implications of that lie, you would second guess the next thing I told you. And if I lied to you 2 times and then 3 times, you wouldn't even talk to me, right? Yep. So I find it interesting that I could show you over 20,000 lies. Like I could show you, I have a library of research sourced, documented, irrefutable, take it to court lies that your government and your media have told you since 9/11 to now. And we could keep going in history, but that's just
Oh
a
yeah.
good time frame.
Agreed.
So then I go, all right, so something's up with 9/11. They're lying to us about something. That means there's
Yep.
something bigger going on.
Yep.
Then I find Jordan Maxwell.
Oh yeah.
And I start watching his documentaries on the dollar bill and then the
Mhm.
whole thing. And what was interesting about the way he came across was he didn't just dismiss religion and Christianity and the Bible like so many other researchers had done. Because I kind of had a phase of being with all the like Richard Dawkins and the atheists,
Yeah,
you
I think
know,
we
the
all
Sam
did that.
Harris's.
Yep.
Yeah, you go through it because you're kind of like, hey, I think they lied to me about religion. So I'm
Yep.
going to go completely the opposite direction, throw it all in the trash and just walk away and go become an atheist. But then I started finding holes in that.
Uh-huh.
And I went, okay. So as I'm going through all this religious stuff, the 9/11 stuff's happening, all this stuff's happening. And then I find Jordan Maxwell, and he was the kind of guy that went, no, you just need to know the keys of how to read the Bible. These
Right.
priests have manipulated it. They're
Right.
just, they're giving you the ABC version, but the real elites, they know the truth about these books. And it's not just the Bible. You got to look at all these ancient texts together. They're just little fragments of a lost archive of knowledge that has been burned and sequestered from public view. And I went, wow. And then Jordan Maxwell's work led me to Michael Tsarian.
Yeah.
And that I'm still recovering from that because
What year was that?
that would have been,
Sorry, I only laugh because I can feel this. I feel the same way.
yeah, because I think Zeitgeist, the first Zeitgeist film came out in 2007.
Yes.
That's when I kind of got into Jordan Maxwell. And then it would have been like 2008. 2008 is when I watched Origins and Oracles because
Yes.
there was a little bit that
Yeah.
Jordan Maxwell had said about Michael's work. And I went, oh, I'll check that guy out.
Yeah.
And then I saw a video of Michael talking about like Hollow Earth and
Yeah.
Atlantis and everything. And I went, oh, who's this guy? I remember taking a pen, writing his name down, looking it up. I found Origins of Oracles. I watched all 46 hours of that. And I went, okay, so there's a lot of things that I have to now question.
For me, it was Esoteric Agenda. Sorry to interrupt you.
And that one was that 2008, Ben Stewart?
Yeah, it was around the same time. I had heard of Michael's work before that because I was looking into the name Drumvalo, and somehow it popped up because of some sort of Irish connection. And then, like, who's this maniac? Like, he was just like the way he was talking. I was like, this guy's a maniac. And then I saw him giving a couple of like, there's some clips in Esoteric Agenda. I'm like, I like how this guy talks and how he thinks. I was like, okay, maybe I should go revisit him. And then I realized, oh, it's that crazy Irish dude from. And then I was like, wait a minute, this guy has he's got something to say. It makes sense. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, just because.
Oh no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and that was kind of my impression too. Was like, oh wow, you know, and see, because I came from the martial art world, I really resonated and understood Michael's like hard Irish, get in your face, the truth, you know, the zero tolerance for the lie, don't take any. It's just that hardcore. He's like, if I could define him, he's like the heavy metal band of the alternative media. Like it's amazing. You know what I'm saying? He's like the heavy metal, like, but I love that because it's like this hard, masculine, strong, you know, we don't tolerate this shit. You know, why you guys wake up? You know, it's kind of like, I just kind of like that. A lot of people don't, but I love it. And he was so I went into his work, started reading his books, started doing some interviews. And I ended up I got an opportunity to host my first radio show on American Freedom Radio, where I had to host in place of Santos Bonacci because he had been going off to do some documentary at that time. And I had some emails with him, and I guess he liked the conversations we had. So he was like, I need someone to cover. Are you free? And I'm like, he's like, I like your voice. Go ahead. And I'm like, okay. So I ended up booking. I said, okay, if I'm going to go on the air, I've got to book some really good guests. And I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I ended up scoring Carmen Bolter, Jim Mars, Michael Tellinger, Michael Tsarian, Jordan Maxwell. I also got John Lear. I got Richard Dolan. I just got this A list of like the most Dr. Joseph Farrell. I just got this A list of the top guys in the field at the time. And they all agreed to come on the show. So literally like every week I was hosting this show, I had like a juggernaut coming in. And anyways, I did and I was sitting there just like a little kid in a candy store. You know, these are the people that I was learning from and reading their books. And I'm glad I had that opportunity. Some of them have passed away since, so it's glad I got to talk to them. And so that launched me. And then after Santos came back, the American Freedom Radio offered me my own show. And the guy's like, you got to name your show something. And I went, what about truth, something like warrior code or warrior? And he's like, yeah, but you talk a lot about the truth. You got to put truth in there. And then, well, truth warrior.
Yeah.
And I thought, because I'm bringing, those are the two worlds that are making me. It's the pursuit of philosophy, the big questions, what the hell's going on in this world? So pursuing the truth.
Mhm.
And then in order to pursue the truth, you need the spine of a warrior. So they bring in the martial arts stuff, the warrior ethos, the whole
Sorry
deal.
to interrupt
And
you
I
right
went,
there.
boom, there's the perfect title, and the rest is history.
Sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt you there, but I really like what you're saying. And I think that's something that's overlooked oftentimes when someone throws the word martial artist out there. I'm not a martial artist myself, but I have practiced my own version of Jeet Kune Do. So I'm just going to put that out there. Fitness has always been a big part of my life. But
Good.
the important thing about the word martial art is that the artist, don't forget the artist part of the martial art, because
Yeah.
I'm a musician and I'm obviously an artist, playing with sounds and vibrations and words. But when I look at someone that is practicing martial arts from the perspective that you do, you really see that it is a form of art, and it's a way of creation,
Yeah.
right? There is a form of creation, and the reason why I really emphasize that whole concept in this interview with you, like bringing up your name, is because it really identifies how you approach what you do. As a listener of your podcasts, I see that even when there's sometimes
Oh,
where
I'm
you have
glad. I'm glad.
disagreements with Michael, and I like the way you handle it, like
Yeah.
because he's a monster. You're tussling with a big mind. How do you do that? And then I'm like, how's
Yeah.
Dave going to handle this? You know what I mean? And then the way you do it, I'm like, okay, you could see he's using Aikido in this situation. He's trying to
Nice.
move him, right?
Good. Yeah.
And I really, sorry, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think it's like an important part
No,
that I
that's good.
wanted to emphasize, because everybody has, I truly strongly believe, I mean, a big part of how I can relate to you, for me, truth, my wife, I drive her nuts with the concept of truth. What is it? What is it? Like physical, mental, and spiritual. It must be one. You have to, like, all these components. And I start freaking out, and it drives her nuts. But truth, to me, at all
Yeah.
costs, like at all costs. Uh, and and it's a hard thing to wrestle with, because sometimes you think being aggressive about something is truth, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you got to be soft. You got to know when to
Yes.
bend, right? So like wearing a mask, for example, to bring it into like today's world. Dude, there's days where I go in there, I'm like, fuck you, I'm not gonna do it. And I give them my reason, or I don't, and I just go and I do what I gotta do. And I'm like, you're not gonna tell me to wear that. But there's
Yeah.
days where I'm a pussy. Like
Yeah.
there's those days where I don't feel strong. And I'd be here a liar to tell you I go in every time without the mask. I
Yeah.
wear it. Like there's a time where I have to bend and understand that right now, this is like the ebb. It's like the bottom of it,
Yeah.
of the wave.
That's right.
Anyway,
That's
sorry
right.
to
Well,
interrupt you
that's
there.
what, no, that's well said. I'm glad you brought that point up, because the role of the artist in society is so incredibly important,
Yep.
and this is what they want to eliminate. And what a real artist is, somebody that creates organically. That's what an artist is. An artist is not someone that just copies and pastes.
Yep.
You can remix, you can find inspiration, you can go, hey, that's a good style. I'm going to try to take that. And what did Bruce Lee say? Look at that style,
Mm-hmm.
take what's useful, and make it uniquely your own. That's the
Mm-hmm.
art part.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
then, because it's dealing specifically with the martial component, the warrior component, I think what I've tried to do is bring the next level of it to people, where we're not just talking about how to defend yourself from a mugger, or how to fend off of an invading army or something like that. As cool as that stuff is, there's the practical component to everything. But to me, it was about the deep artistic level of it, where it's what Jung would have called shadow work,
Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
talks about the shadow.
Yeah.
Michael has often referenced this amazing statement where he's like, all light casts a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So the light of your conscious mind casts a shadow of the subconscious mind. And so, in order to be a holistic, integrated being that is able to fully actualize their potential, you can't ignore the shadow. You can't repress it all and hope everything works out. You have to face your fears. You have to face your inhibitions. You have to become honest with yourself. And when we deal in the world of psychology, they all think it's just about thinking your way out of things.
Yes.
Whereas in the warrior martial art world, the movements of learning how to defend yourself and escape grips and holds, and somebody's grabbing and pushing and punching, and this whole thing that's happening, it's a peaceful, it's not an angry environment. It's an environment to temper you and train you how to use what we call the somatic intelligence. That's what Wilhelm Reich would have called it, the soma, right? The somatic intelligence of the body. And realizing that there isn't really a big separation between mind and body and soul, as everybody thinks. The left brain likes to put things in little file folders. If you put everything together, you realize you think with your whole being. Gichin Funakashi, the founder of Shotokan Karate, he would have said, when you strike with your spirit. Ooh, and we go, what do you mean strike? Well, like my ghost, like Casper the Ghost going to come out and strike you? Like, what is a Mortal Kombat talking about? He's like, no, everything, every part of yourself moves together. You don't have your mind thinking, then your body reacting, then your fist clenching, it's perfect. And when you talk to athletes or people that work in those kind of fields, they often talk about, when I'm in the zone, everything's flowing perfectly. I don't even have to think anymore. Well, in the samurai tradition, they call that mushin. It means no mind. And it's so funny because it's actually not the case, because you are using mind, but they mean don't obsess with the thinking of what you're doing, because that will delay your reactions. It's about be present. Be present and strike at the right moment and be yourself and bring that courage to that moment and without any thought. It's just the state of you being an organic movement is the most natural state of your expression, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're not in that zone, you're hesitating, you're doubting yourself, you're overthinking things. And so that lesson, when I applied it to this spiritual process and this awakening process, it changed my world. And now I've been trying to integrate both those concepts, the warrior and the artist together. And the last thing I'll say about the warrior is, think about the time we're in right now. Yep. There's an old saying that says, everybody hates a warrior until there's an enemy at the gates. Right. Then they're looking around. Where's all the alphas? Where's the guys that are, but until then they're like, oh, they're violent. We want all those toxic masculinity out of the society. And it's just like, well, wait a minute. What's happening right now in our world? Yep. We have enemies inside our gates right now. Our governments, our institutions are captured operations. They've been infiltrated top to bottom by people that do not have your best interests in mind. The reason they did that was because there were no warriors at the gates. So there's a practical application on the individual level of, you should know how to defend yourself in this crazy world. You should also use it as a spiritual artistic practice where you can learn how to express yourself, gain confidence, and fight the real battle, which is the enemy within, your doubt, your fear, your disbelief, and win that battle. But then there's also the societal impact of, as a society, we need strong men and women to stand for truth, freedom, and justice when everybody else cowers under their bed. And so think about the time we're in, my friend. Right now, we need the return of the warrior, and we need the return of the warrior centered around the principle of truth.
Well put, man. That's an imperative, I think, right now. And that's something I struggle with, how to present this information with this podcast. Is at the same time, I do want to help those just getting into the subject, but at the same time, James Corbett of the Corbett Report kind of put it really well once when he said, it's kind of too late to catch up. You know what I mean? Like, to do the research. I don't mean it's too late to do the research. Let me step back a second. Research is very important, but action right now is very, very important, because the enemy is at the door. You know what I mean? They are standing there and they're knocking. And like you said, it's internal. It's an internal enemy. The internal enemy, both within, from the psychological virus that's in our head. And I do want to start talking about a little bit of the mind control stuff and some of the stuff that you talked about, the series you did on cults. And honestly, if anyone hasn't watched that, go watch that, please. I'll put that in the show notes and all that stuff.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you.
It's incredible, because you cover a lot of ground and you simplify it. And it's not an easy thing to simplify. And you did a great job. So anyways,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that lightly. And there's sorry, I lost track of where I was. Warrior and all that stuff. So it's extremely important now, because I was trying to understand, get in the head of the individual that's just walking into this now, today, that woke up last year or this year, whatever, and they're inundated with all this information. And we had the luxury of spending 10 years. Like, I mean, if you're introduced to a subject like, I don't know, David Bohm, you had the time to break down his work and really understand what he meant by the implicate universe. Or Krishnamurti, you had the time. You don't have time now. I mean, it's important to read those, but at the same time, we have to do something, or else we lose. So I'm trying to juggle this and try to understand, get in the head of that individual that's just waking up and being bombarded with all this information. Like, did you know the Federal Reserve? Did you know,
Yeah. It's a lot.
JFK had this speech about secret societies? And then they keep
Yeah. Yeah.
going. And I'm like, okay, half of the people are like, dude, you used to talk about fluoride. Can you tell me about that? I used to think you were nuts. And now they're coming to you for advice.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to be like, dude, it's kind of too late. I don't like that. It's not too late, but without understanding what's happening, it's kind of hard to understand how to get out of it. Like we have to see the trap, I think, before we try to
Yeah.
get out of the trap. And we're in a mass hypnosis right now. All of us, even us, like I think
Yeah.
we kind of are aware of it, people like you and I, but there's still aspects of it where I find myself psyopsed.
Yeah.
And how do you show someone that? So I think for me, the way I've been approaching it is I kind of been giving individuals. So I'm going to ask for your tips, some like just key little tips to kind of keep them on track. When I first started my journey, my story is similar, but when I first started it about, let's say about 20 years ago, 9/11 definitely was a point where I was like, I got to start taking this a bit more seriously. But then a little bit further down, I started realizing this is a rabbit hole. There are a lot of traps here. There's a lot of new
Mm-hmm.
age deception here. There's a lot of like horseshittery. And there's always these mirrors where they flip what they really mean. Do you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
elite, let's say, right? Even with the concept of Lucifer. I know I'm going to more advanced stuff. Sorry, guys. For those that are watching, what the fuck's he talking about? But to simplify it, I kept it simple. I had one axiom that I came up with, and it was the right answer to the wrong question remains a wrong answer.
Mm.
Spend more time with the question. Because I constantly said, well, if I go down this rabbit hole, I might get lost. So,
Yeah.
Mano, just remind yourself, what was the original reason? Like, what's the question? Refine your question. What are you really looking for? And
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes that helped me from going down some really weird stuff, like like I didn't go down the flat earth path, but I could see someone getting lost that way, right? And be like,
Yeah.
no, come over here. That's a new age deception. Or The
Right.
Secret, where like they're
Yeah.
constantly throwing all these truths out there, but they mix it up because they left out key components
Right.
within the ideology of the Secret. And that's like, you can fantasize all you fucking want on some vision board, but if you're not present for what's going on, if you're not accepting that there's some bad stuff there, and you're not trying to like, you bypass it by saying, I'm just going to think positive, you're
Mm.
going to go down a tunnel of, like you say, you're going to get lost in the lie. Like the truth is some shit sucks. You got to accept it before you transmute it. You have to
Right.
accept it and apply the physical, mental, and spiritual. So one of the tips that I had was that quote I said, the right answer to the wrong question remains a wrong answer. And constantly thinking of things in terms of physical, mental, and spiritual, and seeing like how do these three things become one? They are one, and I participate on all these three planes. And the other one was, and you guys did a great job about it, understanding the duality between like the Gnostic approach and the Hermetic approach. And under like
Mm-hmm.
the Hermetic approach, like a more holistic version of like Taoism would fall into that category. All things
Yeah.
are the all. Even the devil is part of the all, of the good, versus the good versus evil concept that you find in asceticism, where you're in a prison. Like the
Yeah.
physical form is prison. Are you kidding me? God speaks through our physical form, and it's a prison. Like he would make, that constantly divides. Like that
Mm-hmm.
division, it takes away from the who you are, right? Like if we spend more time thinking about who are you, like who were you before you were born, who will you be after you die? I wake up every morning, and that's the first thing that I try to remind myself to ask, like, what was that you before you were born? What will that you be after you die? And then at that point, I started to realize that this is the what I am. It's not the who. And if I
Right.
keep my mind on the who, then I'm like, Dave. Who's Dave? Well, Dave's like another version of me.
Mm.
And so I digress. I went off on a philosophical
No,
thing,
I
but I'm
love it,
looking for
man.
tips.
Mano, this is great. This is great. And I can tell you've definitely been tuning into Unslaved too, which is good. And
Definitely.
learning these things. And you've been at this a long time. And I know this is so. I've got some good news for people after this. Okay. So here's the thing. Um, I was fortunate to get into the field of martial arts. And the reason I talk about it so much is because it's so relatable to what we're talking about. And what I'm saying is, I used to be a white belt. I used to know jack shit about this. I used to be a bumbling, like a little baby deer without any balance, no core strength, no understanding of any of this stuff. And people that would walk into my dojo and see me perform and do these techniques are like, how do you make it look so easy? And I'm like, trust me, I had to destroy myself and rebuild myself in order to make this look easy. It took decade. It took so much time to be able to get to this level of refinement. I didn't just have this given to me as some natural gift. It didn't come naturally at all. The curiosity and the interest came, the motivation to do it came naturally, but the thing itself was not. And so I remember what it was like to be a white belt, and I've kept that mindset with me to the best of my ability throughout my entire training career. And then now I feel like that's given me the ability, and I became an instructor and a sensei, and then a renchi, which is like a next level where you're in charge of other senseis and you have to run grading panels and dojos and organize people. And so you get into a position of leadership where now you have to be able to translate what you're saying to people that are advanced, people that are intermediate, people that are just walking in, no idea in the world, some 5-year-old kid that's there learning, he just wants to play jujitsu, and you have to be able to boil down very advanced concepts in very simple terms. Mm-hmm. So I'm not perfect at this, but I've done a lot of work on myself to be able to try to keep relating this in a basic way to people so that they can catch up as quickly as possible, so that they don't have to do necessarily the 20 years of research that it takes to kind of get to this point. As much as I would advise everybody to continue that path, we are running out of time with this specific situation that we're in. And so there are certain things, there are other things that you're going to explore your whole life with, right? But there are certain things I think we just need to boil down really, really quickly. And one of those things is the question that's going to drive you through this research is the question you're probably thinking about right now. It's probably the question that I'm speaking here to the beginner, okay? This is the question you're going to have in your mind. It's the question that probably prevented you from even considering some of these alternative perspectives of what's going on. And that question is, why would they do this to us? Yeah. Why would they lie to us? Yeah. Why would they commit genocide and then go to sleep the next night and not give a shit and keep going back to work? Why would they, like, basically you're asking the question about the nature of evil. And that's really what this is. And what I do is you basically approach this like a detective, and you act as though you're trying to solve a murder mystery. And one of the best quotes comes from Sherlock Holmes, where he's actually boiling down something that the ancient Greeks called the apophatic approach. And that's just a big fancy word for Sherlock Holmes when he said, in order to see the truth, you have to first see what's not true. Because if you can eliminate what's not true, you're only left with the truth. So it's a painstaking process. You have to eliminate what's not true in order to see the truth. And the reason for that is around every truth, in my experience, this is my opinion now, in every truth, it's surrounded by a big circus. It's surrounded by a lot of noise. Like you were talking about The Secret. You were talking about some of these things, even the New Age movement, even religion, even the Bible. All these things have truths in them, but they're surrounded by lies. Yes. Remember, all light casts a shadow. There's a shadow cast on every beam of light out there. Yep. And so the process that we have to do is try to ask that question and be okay with the fact that you might not answer that question. And see, we don't like that. Humans don't like that. Like if you're having a question in your mind listening to this and I'm not able to answer it, that question is going to drive you nuts because you need resolution. Humans need resolution. Yep. Okay. Yep. But here's the thing. It's not so simple. And what I've found is I have my ideas as to why I think these elites or whoever is doing this. Mm-hmm. All right. The architects of control, etc. But it's almost not helpful for me to answer that for you with my answer to that. Yes. It's better that I just tell you the facts and go, here's the facts. And yep, they're doing this. And then you're going to go, but why? We have to establish motive, Dave. That's up to you now. So take that question and let it wake you up every morning to continue the pursuit of truth, because it will help you. That's what motivates you. If I just answer it, I've taken away your motivation to research, and you're just going to keep coming back to me for spoon feeding information. And that's not what I'm about. My goal is to make you even better than I am at this. My goal is to try to take all the stuff that I've learned in 20 years and boil it down into 3-minute videos or 1-hour podcasts or little documentaries or whatever to help stimulate the genius that's inside of each and every one of you. See, I love the quote from Walter Russell. I don't look at genius as associated with like some IQ measurement, okay? I look at genius as something that's a potential that we could all experience as a way of being. Genius is just people that use their whole brain. That's it. They listen to their intuition and they use their whole brain. And Walter Russell said, mediocrity being those people that just kind of go along, get along. They need to be led like animals, like sheep. Mediocrity is self-inflicted, and genius is self-bestowed, meaning you have a choice as to whether or not you're going to operate on the genius level and pursue the truth, find your courage, and actualize your potential, or to be completely helpless in this world where you need someone to rule over you. You need these authorities. You need someone to tell you what mask you have to wear and how many meters you need to stand away from other human beings, and how many shots you're going to have to take on the new subscription model service of the new shot rollout that they're trying to do. Yep. And what hoops you have to jump through, and what laws are coming into effect next week that you had no vote on, and how much debt you need someone to tell you how to live your life. And I personally don't want to live like that. So the main pursuit we're looking for here is, what is freedom? Do humans even want it? Because freedom comes with a great deal of personal responsibility. Yep. And if we do want it, why is there so much opposition to freedom? Not just coming from some Illuminati roundtable, not just coming from your government or your health officials or the cops up the road, but it's coming from your friends and family, from your neighbors, from your society. And this is what drove Krishnamurti over the edge, I think, in the end. Not that it drove him like crazy, that he's like, this is so simple. I don't understand why people are resisting. I'm giving them the best news of their lives, that they can live free, happy, and healthy, and they're rejecting it, and they're fighting me on it. What the hell happened to us? And that's also the question that took Michael Tsarian, my colleague on Unslaved. It took him into the world of psychology and philosophy. Because when you go out there and you go, hey guys, it's not all your fault that you're confused and that you're messed up and that you're depressed and that you're anxious all the time and that you're broke all the time and you're confused all the time. It's not just on you. There's a predator in our midst that is putting shit in our water, putting shit in our air, our food, our media. They're installing their puppet politicians to rule over us on behalf of them as managers, like the managers at McDonald's. So it's not all your fault. If we could wake up to our potential and stop voting for these people and realize the lie we're being sold, we could be free. This thing could be over in a second. 100%. And when you go out and put that message out there and people still go, no, it's debunked. No, you're crazy. No, I don't want to hear it. No, you're realizing, oh, the vast majority of people have been conditioned to hate wisdom and freedom. And when you get into that level of things, now you're on the journey. So there's the starting point, is you start to ask those questions, and then you're going to let the natural force guide you. Because what I did, I didn't have a crystal ball. I didn't have anybody spoon feed me. I had the question present in my mind all the time. And I kept that question, as you said, refined and crystal clear. And I kept asking it just out loud or in my mind. And then lo and behold, synchronicity strikes. I run into people, books are falling off the shelves at libraries. I'm getting phone, you know what I mean?
This one fell off the shelf, the Kabbalion, 12 years ago. It literally fell off the library angel, as Carl Jung called it.
The library angel.
I had read it like a couple months before that, and Rupert Sheldrake had made a reference to something, Carl Jung, and he said he referenced this library angel, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh, he did say that. And then like a couple of weeks later, I was asking all these questions, and the Kabbalion falls off the shelf 12 years ago, right when I was. Anyways, sorry, I digress. Apologies.
No, that's not digress. That's good, and that's what I'm talking about. So that's how I kind of get into the bigger root problem and the root behind everything. Okay, is we got to deal with that. But now, when you get specific, okay, if I were to catch people up, I would say, if we start with, we could start at a lot of different places in history. We could start with the world wars being funded by the same people. We could start with a lot of different things. But let's just go from 9/11 till now, okay? Mm-hmm. Just real quick. So, interesting little connection. 9/11 happened 19 years before COVID-19 apparently struck the world and led us to the biggest lockdown of freedom in human history.
It's just a coincidence, Dave.
Just a coincidence, all right? And this is the interesting thing. There's that old saying, how many coincidences before it
Yeah.
becomes mathematically impossible, right?
100%.
So if you think about that, you go, well, that's interesting. It doesn't prove anything, but it's interesting.
Mhm.
And the next thing we go is, aside from getting into the specifics of 9/11, I would just suggest to people, just go start looking into Building 7 and some of the different anomalies around that, and why the government was so reluctant to even do a 9/11 commission in the first place. It had to be
Mhm.
petitioned to be done. Why, like,
The
7 out of
insurances.
the 11 9/11 commissioners later came out and said that their study was underfunded, it
Yep.
was lacking information, they were held back, and that we should continue the investigation.
Mhm.
And the
So
world
stock
just moved
prices.
on like nothing happened. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you go, okay, so something happened with 9/11. Either it was exactly the way they said it was, and then the government used that event to start the war on terror, to do the what is it, the Homeland Security Front, to do the war and
Exactly.
invasion in Afghanistan and Iraq, to do that whole. Either they used the event to their advantage to accomplish what they were already working on accomplishing,
Mhm.
or that event was planned and executed by the people that wanted to bring about the changes in the society, and bring America to its knees, and all that kind of stuff.
Also,
Either way, we're in the same room when it
we are.
comes to that event, because here we are, right?
Yeah. The new
And
Pearl
then just to
Harbor
finish,
too.
yeah, Pearl Harbor, we could go into a lot of stuff.
Sorry.
But you go, okay, so from 9/11, 9/11 changed our economy, it changed our society, it changed the security level all over the place. It changed the way we look at media, our politicians. It changed the geopolitical game, all kinds of stuff. And we're still not recovered from that. Then we fast forward, all these other little mini events happen in between. I don't want to take too much time here, but then here we are now, October 2019. Think of that date, October 2019.
Event
A
201.
bunch of organizations that I'll give you in a second here get together with Johns Hopkins University, and they actually do a practice run for everything that we're experiencing now.
Mhm.
October 2019. When did the pandemic hit? When did we lock down? That was in March of 2020, right? The lockdowns.
Yep. Yep.
So I saw this happen, and I was going back and forth to LA doing shooting for Unexplained. And I caught something. This was in February. I caught
Mhm.
something, and I came back, and I probably had about 5 days of a pretty rough flu. I've had worse, to be honest with you, but it
Mhm.
was rough. I'm a healthy person. I take care of my health. I've never been to a doctor unless I got injured, and I live a very healthy lifestyle. And I got sick, and I remember how the symptoms that I had started to match what they were saying. The cold symptoms, shortness of breath, all that. And when I had that feeling of shortness of breath, which I'd had before with a previous pneumonia or something, so you never know, right? Um, my wife, we just got a steaming, boiling hot water bowl, and they put some eucalyptus in it, put a towel over my head. I breathed that steam in for 15 minutes straight. I woke up the next morning, good as new, gone completely. I went, wow, that's pretty cool. So I just thought, maybe I got the COVID thing they're talking about, or I just got a flu, and I kicked it. My family got it. We're all over it within a couple of days. And then everything starts to happen. All the lockdowns. Oh my God, the sky is falling. The most deadly pandemic to ever strike the earth. Blah blah blah. But I never forgot about that. The event I was talking about in October 2019 is called Event 201.
Mhm.
Okay. And when you go there and you realize, okay, who was involved in practicing what happens a few months later? Exactly. You have the Chinese Centers for Disease Control. You have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You have the Johns Hopkins University, which is just sort of running it. You have major media companies like MSNBC, CNN, et cetera, bringing in people to do mock newscasts in this
Mhm.
mock exercise. You have, I think, like 6 or 7 of Obama's top officials coming into that meeting. You have, guys from the Rockefeller Institute,
Always,
like
always.
all the top guys, okay, that you'd think would come in, and was sponsored by the World Bank, the whole deal. And you just go, all right, there's something interesting happening here. You have Fauci coming out while Trump was president. I think he said this in like 2018. He's like, it's guaranteed that
Oh
Trump is
yeah.
going to have, under his administration, he's going to have to deal with a deadly pandemic.
Yeah.
And then here we are.
We have.
And so there's just, what I'm pointing out here, guys, is some of the anomalies that got me, as a researcher that has already got this background into and what these people are capable of. And I see these things happening. I see the contradictions beginning right away.
Mhm.
And I went, I have to dedicate time to research this. So I lost my dojo. It forced me to go online and start building my business online and really going all in on my podcast, which I've done. And I've not taken a penny from the government over this period of time, nor will I ever.
Me too.
And I put in full-time research hours into this, watching all the newscasts, watching the World Health Organization live streams, watching all the interviews, all the debates, interviewing guests on my show. So if people want to see the work I did, I lost a lot of it when they canceled all my channels, but I have a bulk of it in these different playlists on my Rockfin channel.
Yes.
And there's one playlist I've been referring people to. It's called the Corona Chronicles.
Yep.
And when you go through it, I've interviewed people like Del Bigtree, Dr. David Martin, Dr. Carrie Madej, Denny Rancourt, Rocco Galati, so many great people in that little series. And then I kept doing my own presentations of the research I was doing live about what was going on. Now, fast forward, there's literally millions of people like us, Mano, around the world collecting this information together and sharing it amongst ourselves, whether it's publicly or privately. I've done both. And we've been amassing information that you could literally bring into a court of law to prove that this whole thing was a complete and total fraud. Okay. I'm not saying 100% there was a virus, there wasn't a virus. But what's really interesting is none of these governments in the world to this day, 18 months into this, have still not produced any material physical evidence of an isolated virus or the actual reproducible science for the justification of these policies that they are implementing simultaneously all around the world. They haven't produced the evidence for it. They've just said that they have it. They've just said it's based on data, but we know a lot of things about that. So without getting too specific, what I was trying to highlight there was we have the general concept of what we're doing with this research, and then we have the specific detailed analysis of the facts at hand. Okay. And a lot of people conflate those two things. But when you're pursuing these subjects, you need to have the deeper, big questions about it. And then you need to get into the specifics. All right. And that's how I look at it. And so this is the work I've been doing on my show. We've been bringing many other elements in on the Unslaved project as well. And Unslaved is really, that's Michael's research. That's Michael's project. That is my sort of, I felt like I owed him because of all the information he gave me. I'm like, we need to get you out there, and he wanted a platform to deliver his information, and it's just been amazing. So I built that for him, and I worked with him, partnered on that. And then I also have my own personal work, which is Truth Warrior. And I kind of separated it like that. And I do that one publicly, but that's what we do. We're trying to get to the point where I can help fast forward your process, person who might be listening to this, so that you can understand these questions that I know you're going to have, because I had them. Mano, you had them. Our job is to try to distill that down into a really easy to understand overview with sources, with evidence. We have to be eloquent with the facts. We can't just be spouting a bunch of nonsense. And then also we do need to educate people on how it's okay to theorize. It's okay. Everything out there, every discovery made started by people like even the Wright brothers with airplanes. It started by theorizing and thinking, and then trial and error, and then eventually you get it right. We're up against, this is a new field of research, okay? And we're up against all the big institutions, the big media, the universities, the most powerful people in the world. And so we're going to get things wrong from time to time. But the general theme is, to me, unshakable. And we've been getting more right now than ever. So I say anybody that's been in the conspiracy theorist camp, which are just people that think for themselves and don't just automatically trust the government and the media with their lives, they've been vindicated times 10 already, because everything that I was told during my research by these people, by the G. Edward Griffins, by the Jordan Maxwell, by all these people, David Icke, all these guys, everything they were saying that was coming is here right now, happening in front of our eyes. And so, that's where we're at.
No, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, because I like where you're going with this. But I think it's key to kind of even bring up something you brought up earlier about if someone lied to you. You said if you find a lie in the media, then it kind of like throws out, it breaks trust, right? And I think that's something that people need to kind of start thinking about from the other perspective as well. You have all the media, everything that they've said for the last year and a half, forget about the stuff before that. Just within the first year and a half, you can kind of see that they constantly keep flip-flopping their story, almost as if that's like a tactic used for brainwashing. We'll get into that in a second. And they haven't been accurate about anything from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to Neil Ferguson's bullshit. 2 million Americans are going to die. And now we got nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing they said came to be true. But how many crazy whack jobs like us and a lot of the names you just mentioned have been saying things that did happen even within the year? Forget about before that. So if you took the mainstream media's narrative and you made it a human and you made it your friend. Now, if this, like, you're with a group of people now, right? And then there's MSM guy, right? So mainstream media guy, let's say that's the narrative. We're building a character out of this archetype, sorry. If this dude constantly comes in your circle and is always lying, always late, says one thing and does another, would you trust him? No. But then you have Sally next to you, and every time Sally says something crazy, all of a sudden it turns out to be true. At what point do you start going, wait a minute, Sally's saying something crazy? Maybe I should ask her what she thinks, because every other time I thought she was crazy, she turned out to be correct. She turned out to be true. Like, I'm reminded of David Icke's interview last year. Regardless of what people think of the man, the interview he did on London Real, the first one he did before everything got locked down, he's talking about Carrie Mullis. He's talking about Event 201. He's talking about all these things that end up, passports are coming and chips are coming. It's all bullshit. It's all a fucking lie. They're going to censor you. What did he say in that interview that did not happen?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And at what point do people just start going, wait a minute. I got to start asking better questions. So, and then the question I think people need to ask is, Yuri Bezmenov, how do we get to the point where you hypnotize an entire nation and then the world? How do you do that? And where did this idea come from? Like this concept, this technique, and then you get to the Tavistock Institute. Sorry, I'm going off because
this is great, man. This is awesome. I'm glad you have a podcast. People need to hear what you have to say. So Yuri Bezmenov, perfect. Thanks for bringing it up. He said that there were 4 stages to how to take over a free society, and he's speaking from the perspective of being a high-ranking KGB defector. And he was actually brought to America and interviewed by G. Edward Griffin in like the 80s. Okay. Talk about a prophetic interview. If you watch that G. Edward Griffin interview with him, you look me in the eyes and you tell me that you're going to go back to trusting Anderson Cooper on CNN. Okay. Yeah. So think about this. He said there were 4 stages that they laid out, they being the Communist International that wanted to infiltrate all Western countries and destroy it from within, you know them. He said there's 4 stages of how we're going to do it. Number 1, destabilization. So you destable things like this is 9/11. This is the economic distraction, the whole economic crisis, you destable a civilization. You can destable it in a lot of different ways, but that's number 1, destabilize. Next one is demoralization. Demoralization, take all the wind out of their sails, make them stop believing in themselves. Teach all the kids in school that their country is hateful and racist, and it's built on evil, slavery, horrible injustice, and freedom is bad, and blah, 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 blah. And you don't know what gender you are. And that's how you demoralize a nation, right? You all, even you get the NFL, they're all kneeling at the national anthem. They're all, all this stuff. It's to demoralize the spirit of freedom in the people, and also the belief in their country and in their own individual sovereignty. So you demoralize people. The next one is introduce a crisis. So you have to do the first 2 steps, okay? You destabilize first. So these are like, if you're looking at it as a military strategy, we'll talk about some of that in a minute. I want to get into asymmetric warfare and how that works. But before that, think of it like this. If you're going to attack a nation and try to get in and take it over, you don't just go in the front gates, especially if they're powerful, like America, like the West. You can't just go in the front gates. You have to, little ninja stealth attacks around the borders, move inside, Trojan horse, get your agents inside the gates, get them working in the government, get them working in the institutions and whatnot, the Hollywoods and things like that. So that's the destabilization, demoralization. Introduce a crisis like a false flag event or a real event. Doesn't really matter. There's something that's a crisis. Crisis creates fear and panic in the minds of the public. Okay. What Edward Bernays, the propagandist, called the public mind. Yep. All right. You need to start catching on to the fact that psychologists at the highest level know how your brain works. They know how your psychology works. They know why you're afraid. They know how to create fear. They understand the process of hypnosis and how to actually blind your mind. They know this. They've studied it. They spent millions of dollars on it. And so if you're going to introduce a crisis, you're doing it for the reason of installing anxiety and fear and hysteria, because they know that the people will go to the parent figure. This is where you get into Jung's animus in the mind, and how we human beings project our childhood traumas onto our spouses, onto our world leaders. And so they know how to pull the rug and go, hey, especially those out there that had a bad relationship with mom or dad. They know that if they become the imago, the leader in your life, this is how these cult leaders work too, which we'll get to in a bit. They know how to become the parental figure in your mind, and not your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, the shadow, the deep well that you have mostly no idea about. So that's how they do it. The crisis is there so that you go, oh my God, I'm scared. It's like when you were a kid and you couldn't fall asleep because you had a nightmare. And what do? You get up and you go run into mom and dad's bed. You go, I'm scared. I had a nightmare, right? Like my kids do. That's natural. That's normal. But eventually we mature and we become adults and we learn how to face our fears, right? So but they know that there's this dynamic in the mind. So if they create the nightmare, all the people who are like childlike in their thinking and couldn't face their fears and couldn't live on their own and need everything to guide their lives for them, they're going to cry out for the new mom dad figure, which is the government. They're going to cry out for them to save them from the nightmare. Make me feel better, reassure me, hug me, give me some warm milk and pat my back. And that's what the government does. That's why they get the celebrities out there. Yep. That's why they get the music and the pop artists out there. Yep. They get you to soothe you. That's why everybody's still wearing the mask, even though we know it doesn't do jack shit. And you're actually inhaling your own microbacteria, reinfecting yourself, and you're destroying your brain cells because you're inhaling your own CO2. It's retarded. It's the dumbest thing you've ever been asked to do, and you're still doing it, even though it hasn't done anything. And even though you're now getting these shots, these magic shots, you're just getting them and you're still being told you got to wear this shit, because this isn't about the virus. This is about the soothing effect that they're trying to have, which is, guys, there's a big scary monster virus out there. Mommy and daddy are going to take care of it. Just follow the rules. Be home by 9 p.m. Go to bed when we tell you. Eat what we tell you. Go where we don't open your business. It's too dangerous. Wear the mask. It's the only way to protect those people you love. We got this. Do as you said. You'll line up over there. And those people are like in reptilian fight or flight brain. Mm-hmm. That's music to people's ears. They don't care if it's true. They just want someone out there that's the strong, I know what I'm doing, or the soft, motherly Bonnie Henry character. It's gonna be like, it's okay, just wear the mask. And it's like, they need that because, and people now, I see them out there. They wear it not because of a virus. And even they don't think that. They tell me to my face, I wear it because it makes me feel more comfortable.
That makes me sick every time I hear that. I've heard that too.
It's a soother for adults is what it is. And then guess what people do? They project that fear onto their children. Yes. And now we open up that can of worms where what's the fourth? So destabilization, demoralization, introduce a crisis, provide the solution to the crisis. Yeah. And then you've got the takeover. Yep. You've take over, you invade, you take the reins of power, you become very overt. So this is how the agenda goes. It starts stealthily. They deny it. They lie to your face, then they deny it. Yep. A good thing to read that I recommend is to read Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Yes. Read anything he's written. Yes. Get your hands on the man's work. Yes. Listen to his lectures. Yes. He said something very, very interesting in the Gulag Archipelago. He said, he said how we burned in those camps later, and he meant how we burned inside. Mm-hmm. How we burned in those camps later, just thinking if we would have given any level of resistance before it got to this point, we wouldn't be here. And he said, but with the truth struck us, like it struck us over, which was that we didn't love freedom enough.
You gave me goosebumps, dude.
We didn't love freedom enough. Yeah. And that's from the man that survived the gulags of the Soviet Union, which the world still has yet to fully understand what went down. 100%. We know about Hitler. 100%. You don't know about the real heavyweight champions of the world.
Not
which
at
is
all.
Mao Zedong and Stalin. Okay.
Yeah,
So
100%.
yeah, like you got to sit back and go, wow,
Even that last
talk
step,
about a prediction, because all those steps, my friends,
yeah,
all of those steps have happened. We are in the fourth phase of this right now. So if you're just waking up now, yes, you might be a little bit late to the party, but you're more than welcome, because we need all hands on deck at this point.
100. And then like that last step, the when Yuri Bezmenov dropped that word normalization. That's like the
Oh, that's the
final
one I
step.
missed it. Yep. Can you do
And
that one? Go ahead.
it just it drives me nuts when I heard him say that. And he even like a good friend of mine who works behind the scenes on this, Dave, he's Czech, and the Yuri Bezmenov refers to that moment after the Soviets take over the Czech Republic, and says everything has been normalized. And you know that concept,
Right.
that concept is happening right now. The new fucking normal.
They said it, the new
They
normal.
said
Yeah.
that fucking
Boom.
word. As soon as I heard that, I was like, "What? Yuri Bezmenov, bitch! Yuri Bezmenov, right?" And then
You know another one, Mano? You know another one is
Yeah.
the Great Reset.
Yes.
Where have I heard this shit before? The Great Reset, which was announced by the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab right in the middle of the pandemic, oddly enough, where they said, guys, listen, they said COVID was an opportunity.
Yes.
Like, how is a pandemic where people are dying and losing their jobs an opportunity? Are you kidding me? So it's an opportunity for what? A great reset.
Yes.
What? Oh,
yes.
Mao Zedong. Yes. Go look up, go Google right now as I'm talking to you these words. The Great Leap Forward.
Yes.
So go look at that shit.
Actually,
and then compare notes with what they're proposing in Davos right now.
I'm going to interrupt you just 1 second, because I had only 2 quote type things that I had prepared to like talk about if it came up, and you just brought up one that kind of helps illustrate. I have a quote. Sure. Sorry, I'm mumbling. I have a quote that that backs up exactly what you just said, and it also kind of helps tie in the why would they do this? Who are these fucking people? What you said earlier. Well, we're all familiar with Dave Rockefeller. You've mentioned Rockefeller. And here's what he said after coming back from Mao's China. So now this is an individual, David Rockefeller and the Rockefeller Foundation, who have a big part in everything that is your life in terms of institutions. They have had their hands in, from education to oil to
cult of the medics.
Exactly. Oh, that's one thing I want to talk to you about in the future.
We'll get to that for sure.
That's something I know very little about. But anyways, Rockefeller says, after coming back from Mao's China, he goes, one is impressed immediately by the sense of national harmony. Whatever the price, that's disgusting. Whatever the price of the Chinese Revolution, it has obviously succeeded in fostering high moral and community purpose. I don't know about that. General social and economic progress is no less impressive. The enormous advances of China have benefited greatly for the singleness of the ideology of purpose. The social experiment in China under Chairman Mao, the leadership is one of the most important and successful in history. So he, in this quote,
oh my, I've never heard that quote before. Mano, can you send that to me after the show? 100%. I'm going to credit you with finding it when I post it. That's brilliant. 100%. Not what he said is brilliant, but just that we catch them saying these things. Yeah.
And I'll credit the great James Corbett.
Perfect.
Also another great resource for all the newbies. But yes. Right there, he is literally telling you in 1973 that he agrees after 40 to 50 million. We don't even really know how many died in the.
Yeah, that's how bad it was. They lost count.
We don't even know.
That's how bad it was.
Like, that's disgusting. And this motherfucker, and I'm just gonna say it, he's fucking applauding us. Like, okay, now these are the individuals that are running your life. Like, I don't want to get into Cecil Rose and all the round tables. Maybe that's just something we could talk about at another time. But if you take the line and go all the way back, they've been telling you from the day one. They have not hidden anything. The concept of spelling is, anyways, I want to make this more about you.
Well, I can actually answer that. That's actually something everybody's going to run into as a question. It's a question I had, everybody had, and you have to get into how these people think. Okay. And these people, we can absolutely get very specific. You mentioned David Rockefeller, whatever. There's levels to this hierarchy. Okay. If you can name them publicly, they're still only at the manager level. They're not at the big board level, CEO level, but either way, they're still big players. So Rockefeller also had basically openly admitted in his memoirs, I think it's like page 405 or something, where he openly admits that they're working on a big worldwide conspiracy to build a world government run by unelected elites That's literally what he admits to, and yet I'm the conspiracy theorist. But anyways,
Well, he also even
the,
ends a quote in that same book where he says, "If my whatever I'm paraphrasing something about how his family runs things." He goes, "If this is the conspiracy, then I am guilty." Like
yeah, we said
I'll
if this is
find
the
it.
charge, yeah, because he
That's
said
it.
some people have characterized myself and my family as being part of an international
Yes.
group of people taking over the world, creating a world government run by supranational elites. If that is the charge, I am guilty and I am proud of it.
They're telling you,
It's
man. They're
right
telling
there, written
you.
by his own hand,
Oh
signed by
God.
him. Okay. So, and we could go endlessly. I've done shows on this.
Yes.
Michael and I did a show on Truth Warrior. You can still get it on my Podbean account and my iTunes account. And I think it might be on Rumble. I'm not sure, but there are 2 episodes we did called The Psychology of Conspiracy Deniers. And we did
Oh,
that
that was
as a
on Truth
flip.
Warrior. Yeah, that
It
was
was
on
on
Truth
Truth
Warrior.
Warrior as a
Yeah, yeah,
public
yeah,
one.
yeah.
And those are really good because what we did is we flipped the narrative that you'll usually see in these mainstream publications like Popular Mechanics and bunch of these professors running around or whatever who think they're smart about this, they'll characterize people such as myself and these other researchers who are very rational, well researched, good people. They'll characterize us as being absolutely crazy because there's something wrong in our psychology that we just can't, we don't accept any level of authority or whatever they're trying to say. And we're like, no, thanks for bringing up the field of psychology. Let's get into it, shall we? And let's see which one is the one in denial. And we prove in those episodes that is the people that just scoff at you and these intellectual guys that don't really care about the truth. They're just wanting the accolades and the book deals, in my opinion, that they are the ones that are in a blind state of consciousness.
100%.
And so that's a good show. But the point I wanted to bring up here was something really important that I learned. So you have the political level, you have the banking level and the media level, and I could make the case, and I usually do this for people that are new to this way of thinking. I make the case that these people are doing this for power, money, and control. Okay. They're just doing it for power and money. I could prove that, Pfizer and all these companies, their stocks have skyrocketed. Amazon, Walmart, their stocks have skyrocketed while all of us have been losing our businesses. And so you could make the case, well, the reason they don't want you to know about HCQ and ivermectin or natural health is because they want to make a crap load of money. Bill Gates and all his cronies, they want to make all this money off the shot. I could make that case for you. But then we have to get to the level of understanding how sociopaths and psychopaths think, where they are out there to get whatever it is that they want. Okay. And I'm going to get to how I don't even think it's about money in the end. But, anyways, we'll get there. They don't care if there's collateral damage for what they're doing. Okay. They clearly don't. They look at all the numbers and everything as, look at all the study. Look at what they're telling you on the news. How many new cases over here and new cases over there. And there's the cases and the variants. And it's all computer models and numbers on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's how these elites view what's happening. They don't meet and walk with people like you and me.
Mm-hmm.
They're running around in limousines and they have gold-plated toilet seats. They don't
Mm-hmm.
think about normal human interactions. They look at us as like a cancer on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
They look at us as the farm animals on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Remember Animal Farm by George Orwell?
Yep.
Might want to go check that one out again. So when they look at, what if these people have a belief system? I'm going to ask in a form of a question, just so that it's not declarative. What if these people have a belief system that is very similar to a religion? Okay, it might even be a religion, and because look at it like this: Christianity still survived 2,000 years; they're still around. Okay, with their beliefs. The Catholic Church, the Vatican, it still has 386 orders and chivalric orders and royal societies and secret societies surrounding Vatican City. Mm-hmm. They still exist. The Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the Order of St. John, they all still exist. Mm-hmm. They didn't go anywhere with the passage of time. Islam still exists after thousands of years of tearing itself apart from within and having all kinds of wars with the Western world. Judaism still exists. They feel that they're the oldest religion on the planet. They still exist. I don't think that's the truth, by the way. Buddhism still exists. So these ancient religions exist, and atheism is nothing new. That's been a group that's been around for a long time as well. The Gnostics, they come from a branch of Gnosticism, by the way. You go, all right. Yeah, and I'd have to dissect that. A lot of people go, "What? I thought they were believing in that." Yeah. We'll get there. Either way, forget that. Ancient religions still exist today. The Royal Society still exists. They still wear their crowns.
Yep.
The priests at the Vatican, they still walk around in their medieval dress-like clothing, like they walked out of a time machine.
The Knights Templar
So the fact that these organizations still exist, those are just the public religions. The public religions that have been approved by the real elites that gave you those religions, okay, and sponsored them and financed them and pitted them against each other for a battle for conquest for a long time. What if they have their own religion that they don't really talk to you about, but they show it to you through symbolism? And why would they do that? Why would they have this thing where they like to tell you what they're doing? Like you said, you just think of all the movies we could get into that have shown us exactly what's happening right now. We call it predictive programming, right? And in one sense, you could look at it as this is part of the mind control operation where like a serial killer will tell you what he's about to do to you before he does it because he gets a kick out of it. There's that level. There's the marking of territory when it comes to placing symbols throughout all the media and all the car companies and all the oil companies. They put the ancient symbols all over the place. But then there's the actual belief structure. And so what if these elites come from their own custom hidden religion, and that religion has a particular prescription of how to achieve power. So the end goal of that religion is power on earth. So maybe you could look at every religion and go, well, one religion is about ascending to heaven when you die. Another religion is about loving thy neighbor. Another religion is about, I don't know, yoga and meditation. Their religion is about power. Okay. So if you're in the religion of power, or as I've called the cult of power or the cult of death and power, because to achieve that kind of power, a lot of death has to happen. If you're in that cult, one of the prescriptions in order for them, because they do believe in karma, they come from an ancient Egyptian Setian Atenist cult, by the way. I could actually get very specific. That's what they are. That's where Masonry comes from, the whole deal. They all come from ancient Egypt. Yep. And their belief is that they are not able to break karmic law. So they have to find loopholes in order to achieve illegitimate power and control. So that they believe they're permitted to lie to you, but as long as they also show you the truth. That way, there's like a little fine print clause that they've somehow gotten away with, which is that, hey, we actually told you everything we were doing and you went along with it and you gave us your freedom and you fell for our lies. So therefore it's survival of the fittest, right? These people are also Darwinists and materialists. So they have an ancient religion that they believe in this ritual magic process where they show us, the sheep, as they like to think of us, they show us what they're going to do. And if we don't resist, then they get clearance. It's like, okay, did they resist? No? Okay, green light, go ahead. And I believe that's how they operate. Because I know whether you believe in what they believe in, that's not what we're talking about. That's just what they believe. That's their basic operating principle. And we're dealing here with people with literally, we're not talking about rich people. We're talking about wealth beyond your wildest imaginations that goes back into ancient history. And the wealth is not just gold and money. It's knowledge of human psychology. It's knowledge of building. This is the Masonic element of it. And not all Masons are bad and not all Masonry is bad, but there's a dark element to it. It was infiltrated in the 1700s. And the process of how to build civilization. And what's the opposite of building? Destroying. So if they are in people, if this is a satanic, Luciferian, Setian type ideology, these people take good things and they invert them, right? Yeah. And they also don't seem to have a lot of creativity. So they kind of steal a lot of the good ideas and the good symbolism and the good vibes from the ancient spiritual traditions that were there to uplift humankind and free humankind and teach them about God and the universe, right? And they co-opt those things and they twist them because they know we are led by those ideas and we're attracted to them. And they get a kick out of taking something good, inverting it, and then drawing us into their temple and recruiting us or doing away with us. And here's where we get into the cults. I'll just quickly give you this. So I did a series on, as you mentioned, cults of death and power. It was a raw podcast where I just sort of mixed it on the spot live, very little pre-planning. I just sort of threw a bunch of notes at people and it went like each episode's 3 or 4 hours long. it was a rough, raw exploration, but I think I did a decent job. I'm now working on the next phase of that, which is a series called Cult of the Medics. And it's going to be dropping at the beginning of September. And it's going to be a 12-part minimum mini documentary style series. So it's very watchable. It's entertaining. It's very educational. Each episode's short and sweet. But not to digress too much, the reason I had an interest in cults was as I started talking to people about, I think they're lying to you about the pandemic. I think they're lying to you about all this stuff. People kept asking that why question. Well, how could they do that? Who could do that? And I'm like, here's the number one mistake that naive people do, okay, is they actually project their own virtues onto everybody else around them. So what I mean by that is your grandma, your grandpa, your good, loving, average people out there that are all lining up to get the shot, that are all wearing 3 masks and doing all this stuff. They're good people. They mean well. They think they're being virtuous. They deep down, they don't want to hurt anybody. They just want to do what they want to go along. But they're also incredibly naive because they don't understand what's really happening is that they're being used. That virtue in them has been used against them to help these very, very evil people achieve ungodly amounts of power over them, and they don't see it. So you go, all right. The cult level for me was I need to not just research these different cult leaders of all these different cults, like Heaven's Gate and Jim Jones and all those cults you can think of, or all the ancient ones. I need to look into the followers, because if these cult leaders didn't have any followers, they'd be out of business on day one, wouldn't they? If Jim Jones didn't have 1,000 people to go follow him out to Jonestown and drink a bunch of Kool-Aid and give Kool-Aid to their kids, then he would have been out of business. But the fact that these very charismatic people know how to blind you with the light. You hear that song, Blinded by the Light, right? That's what they do. That's what that term Illuminati really is. These people are illuminists, and what they're not into light. They talk about light. They talk about love and light. They talk about goodness and brotherhood and all that. But these people, they take the light and they put it right between your eyes and they blind you to everything else around. So that's how light works. I learned this again from Michael. He said, he broke this down, and basically the idea is light can reveal, right? Because if it's dark outside, you get a flashlight, you can see, okay? But if I take that flashlight and shine it right in your eyes, now you can't see shit because you're blinded. It's too much light. It's right in your face. So light can reveal, but light can also conceal. 100%. So what these are the concealers. These are the hidden persuaders. The black and white checkerboard. The black and white checkerboard, the game of chess. Are you on the white squares of knowledge or the black squares of ignorance, right? That's how they think, okay? So they look at it as a game. And yeah, there you go. And when people understand, they don't understand how this works. It works in what's called a compartmentalized structure. Compartmentalized. So think of little like compartments, and each compartment knows what it needs to do. It's like a unit, a cog in a wheel. It only knows what it needs to do. The people that run that little compartment, they don't know anything outside of their compartment. They run their compartment like good little sheep. Okay. Then there's another compartment that knows what it has to do. Then there's another compartment that knows his. And by the time you get all these compartments together and you get up to the top, that's the board level. That's the high table, right? In John Wick, they talked about the high table of the criminal mafias. Yep. The high table, the round tables, the seated ills, the priesthood of the illies level, okay? They're the top management, and the people in each level of these different compartments only knows what they need to know. It's run like the military. Yep. You only know what you need to know. And this is how this thing works. And actually, if you really think hard about this, that's how the mafia works. That's how criminal organizations work. Well, that's how many of these corporations work. Yeah. And that's how secret societies work. And this is an ancient blueprint of how to do this. This isn't new. It didn't start in 9/11. Didn't start with the pandemic. Didn't start with JFK. It started in the ancient times about how to do this. Yep. And so what I'm saying here is that there are people that hold advanced knowledge about the mysteries of the universe, about the mysteries of human consciousness, about the mysteries of how to build or destroy civilizations, about the mysteries of finance, etc., health, etc. And that knowledge has not always been in the hands of good people. There have been many good people, even at the elite levels, that have tried to fight against this. Those are the whistleblowers from the past. Those are the, those people that came out, and even today they're coming out from the medical establishment and blowing the whistle, and
Yep.
but the real power is held by the black magicians, the dark magicians, the black nobility. These are the people that hold the purse strings. They run the banks, they run the media. And if they can run the media, they can control the public mind. And if they can control the public mind, they can control the land and the resources. And that's how this game is played. So this
100%.
is literally a battle for your soul,
Yep.
your inner sun, your inner light, your inner truth and knowledge. They want to take that soul from you and recruit you to become a robot in their compartmentalized structure. Notice how, at the same time that we're dealing with a pandemic and an economic crisis and election fraud and all these things, it's all the same time. We're also being introduced slowly but surely into a robot future, into what we call transhumanism, which is this dream, this wet dream that these elites have had, which is to take away the individual nature of the human being and the desire in each human being to pursue to pursue individual freedom. All right. They want to make cogs in a wheel so that what David Rockefeller was commenting as a positive thing in Mao's China could be a system applied to the entire planet.
Exactly.
And that would only benefit this supranational elite and not us. So they want a two-tiered society instead of so they want only the districts like from the Hunger Games. Yep. And then the elites. That's it. And whereas before, right now, as flawed as it is and as corrupt as it is, okay, for many reasons, we had the middle class that would have been the majority of people that had at least enough food and enough, like they were taking care of themselves. Well, they need to destroy that middle class because they can't have any competition on the grand chessboard because they don't want geniuses. They don't want entrepreneurs going out there and becoming naturally successful organically. They want to be able to manage and control the entire farm. And if they view this earth as a farm, they view themselves as the farmers. So I'll end it there. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to add to some of what you were saying because you said so much there that really hit home for a lot of people watching this. Like if they're new to this information, going back to Lucifer, even the word. My background is Greek, and I've heard many people break it down this way, and including yourself and Michael. If you break down the word, it literally means luce from the Latin light and fere from the Greek word to bring. And then you see that he's the bringer of light, right? And then too much of it, like you quoted Michael, will blind you. We're quoting Bruce Springsteen, right? Blinded by the light, but at the same time, it will shine within the corner of a dark room. But the really big thing here is, and I've heard many people say it, many mentors of mine, including Michael and yourself, is that this is a war on consciousness. And I truly believe that.
Right.
And if you really stop to look at what that really means, like I almost felt that when I was a child. I know as odd as that means, like it was like there's something weird about the concept of just the way that they play with what identity is. It's constantly, they want you to focus on the what. They constantly want to move your head and capture your attention and your focus. And that attention and focus is similar to the light. How they move your head as to where you look, what on your phone or whatever, what information you're getting, they're literally controlling where that light is shining. They are controlling you by controlling your attention, your awareness, and your focus. And where attention goes, energy flows, right? Like you could take these concepts and really apply it to this. What are they trying to do? They're trying to manufacture your narrative of reality by imposing on your psyche their version of an illusion. And if what you feel within you, believe what you have in your mind and your heart, and you see in your mind, and you create in your mind, it'll become a physical manifestation. If you hold it in your mind, something as simple as writing a song or writing a podcast, right? You see it in your mind first, and then you write it out, and it's based on your beliefs, which are based on your history. But what if I have control of that narrative of your history, the bullshit history that they give us? What if they have control of where your focus and attention are by throwing porn at you, by throwing like fear mongering, by saying the physical is a prison? Now they're controlling where you pay attention. That attention flows in that area. And what are you going to do? You're going to manifest their bullshit narrative. And I'm using words that sometimes someone will say, oh, those are new age terms. No, they're co-opted. If you go
Yeah.
back in time and you realize what is being spoken of, the inner light, the light within, the insight, you're looking inward. It's sight inward. That inward understanding is what dictates how you view the world. It's your point of view. It's how you view everything that comes into your head, into your mind. It's where critical thinking begins. Now, if I co-opt the what you are and make it all about identity, to kind of break it down to what Dave was saying, now I'm speaking to the viewers about transhumanism and the concepts of sovereignty, really is what we're talking about. They have a war on your consciousness and your sovereignty, because one of the most powerful things you have on the physical plane is your signature. Because what does your signature represent? I can go to a bank right now. Well, I won't, but I could, and get a loan for $500,000. What gives me that $500,000? My signature. What do you hold me accountable to? My signature. What do I sign over to you the day I'm born and my parents go and get one of these motherfucking things? I signed over the who I am. On the bottom of your fucking birth certificate, it says banknote in Ontario.
Yeah.
It says
And that all capital
banknote.
letters with the
Yes.
Maritime Admiralty law, dude, like it's amazing to really put it all together to see how they've built this.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And you're bringing up a great point, this idea of insight and inner light. I mean, yeah, all these religions and New Age, and it gets co-opted. All good things attract lice and predators, right? So just remember that. It doesn't mean the whole thing is wrong. There's nothing, even symbols, like everybody's talking about symbols and these Illuminati pyramids and stuff. There's nothing evil about a pyramid.
No.
There's not even anything evil about a 13-step pyramid with a removed capstone and an eye. That used to be the symbol of God, of viewing the world, right? But then they co-opt it and they use it as their sigil, their signature to invert that principle, because the reason it's powerful is because they know the power that it has over your mind, right? If we understand the nature of symbols, and we get into, again, referencing Jung, his book, Man and His Symbols, where he was talking about the idea that there's archetypes embedded in us, in our consciousness, that have been developed over eons of time, right? And that in our phylogenetic cell structure is the memory of our ancestors, like the native tribes and the Aboriginal tribes believe, right? And if there's something true to that, then there's certain things that these elites know that we're attracted to. Just like we know that moths are attracted to light or a flame or whatever. It was actually interesting. I was camping recently with my family and we're sitting around the fire, and I just couldn't help but notice all these moths dive bombing into the fire. I was like, I watched like a mass genocide happen in front of me of all these suicidal moths flying into the flame. And I went, wow, what a powerful metaphor for what's happening. But anyways, these guys know, that we have this symbolic reservoir within us, okay? This ancient memory, this like DNA memory of these symbols, and that not just the symbols, but the concepts associated with them. Like why is the image of Jesus Christ pictorialized as almost a feminine character with long flowing hair? And he looks like a white Caucasian with blue eyes and a nice little goatee and a blue sash and a white flowing robe. And he's got the hands. Where did that, because if there was a Jesus historically, that's not how he looked. Okay. We don't want to break it to you. So why is that symbol the one that everybody weeps in front of and bows before and falls on their hands and flips all over the place about, right? It'd be the same with Buddha and all these symbols. There's a reason why those symbols are powerful for us, and it's not for the reasons we might first think it is. And then what about these symbols of pyramids and Rams and Dodge Ram and Chrysler and Walmart with the sun and the even the Republican Democrat logos and the just on and on we could go. What's with all the ancient Babylonian and Egyptian symbolism encoded in, say, the Super Bowl halftime shows or the Olympic ceremony games? Like, what are those rings? What are the rings of the Olympics? What is that? Is that the same one on the Audi cars? Where does that go to? Why are all these symbols like even think about Subaru and some of these other companies? Why are they all astrological in nature? Why do they have to do with the astrology symbols, right? And how is that? Does that mean astrology is bad? No, it just means there's advanced knowledge and they know how to capture your subconscious mind. They also know about repetitive phrases, certain ways that you speak. flicker rates on television sets, the audio tones, the different what hertz frequency the music is set at that you're listening to. They know about so many little subtle things about how to create a hypnotic state in your mind. So that what does hypnosis do to you?
Yes.
If you go under hypnosis, what they're doing is it opens you up to suggestion. That's why when you're going under hypnosis, the first 5 minutes of them talking and counting and telling you to breathe is to soften up your defenses. And there's probably positive uses for hypnosis, but I'm talking about how they're using it as a weapon.
Yep.
They soften up your defenses of your conscious mind so that you are open to suggestion. Who would want to do that?
Yep, it's even in the Greek root word of the word hypnosis, hypnosis. It means to be put asleep.
Right?
So give me 1 second. I have a document I want to pull out because what you just said.
Sure.
1 second. Sorry, I just can't find it. I'm not going to keep looking for it. Basically, what it is onto what Dave was just saying for the viewers out there that think that's a bunch of horseshit. You know what a good resource is? Go on the Freedom of Information Act off of the CIA's website. It's their government documents, and start punching things in the search engine. And you'll see that they've been researching these things themselves. The actual institutions that you look up to are actually looking into this. And one of the documents you may find is the name of it escapes me. Shit, I wish I had it here. Oh, here it is. Or coincidentally enough, synchronicities on my side. The document's the Gateway Experience. Sorry, the Gateway Experience. And what it is a document where they looked into a lot of meditation, binaural beats, transcendental meditation, remote viewing, and all this stuff. And they have an actual document where someone was asked by the U.S. military to see if this stuff actually works. And you know what the conclusion is? It does actually work. Repetitive words, like Dave was saying, binaural beats, which is a frequency beat in your. I don't want to get into it too much, but they themselves research these things and actually find ways on how to put you in a hypnagogic state. This is systematic.
And think about what you're saying, Mano. Just people listening to this, okay? And I have a few more things to add to that. Is again, if I could show you that your government has lied to you knowingly, even one time.
Yes.
Would you trust them again? And if we could keep repeating and showing, oh, they lied here, and I could prove it, like undeniable, okay, and it keeps happening, you're going to go, yeah, I should second guess what they're telling me, okay? But now plug into that equation what you just said of the level of knowledge that they have about what makes you tick, what buttons they need to push. Do you trust them with that level of knowledge? Okay, because now put this into it. Think about something like Operation Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Okay. What's a mockingbird? It just keeps repeating the sound that it hears over and over again. And so funny that they named this program, which was about basically installing over 400 of their own CIA agents into major media companies and feeding them news stories and being a part of the entire media operation to inform or disinform the public. There was actual congressional hearing done where the CIA was forced to disclose at least a little bit of this project. And if you think they just shut it all down, I've got an igloo in the Arctic to sell you. So you got Operation Mockingbird was a CIA program that enlisted more than 400 American journalists, as well as journalists around the world, to manipulate public opinion by spreading propaganda, or what we call today fake news. Okay, it's been happening since before World War II. There's all these different projects. I made a good note here of some of the different names of these projects that you can go look up. You got Project Artichoke, Project MK Ultra, which MK Ultra was actually the vast majority of it was done in Montreal, Canada, and in Ottawa.
I got it right here. That's
there
what
you
you're
go.
Talking about.
Yeah, perfect. There was another one called, where was this one? I want to make sure I get the name right. It was a project where they actually infiltrated occult and satanic orders to glean the knowledge that they had about hypnosis.
Ooh, send me that, please.
And I'm just trying to find the name of that one. Just if you give me a sec, we got
totally.
Operation Mockingbird. Yeah, I'll look up my notes. I did a presentation on this, and there's so many different examples of that. Where
is that the one with he was part of LeVay's school, and then he went off and he was a military. He has the eyebrows up,
the weird hair, pointy guy, whatever.
Michael,
Totally. I know who you're talking about. Sorry, everybody listening. Well, and they cover him a little bit in the Out of Shadows documentary when
That's
they
right.
get
Great
into this.
documentary. Great
It
documentary.
is. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is.
Allegro.
Okay.
Allegro.
There it is. Okay. So we got Secret Project Artichoke, which was about hypnosis, Operation MK Often. So it's called Operation MK Often. And it's about infiltration of mystical black magic satanic groups using psychedelics, mystics, satanists, occult, etc., to try to determine more information about it. You have the Psychic Spy remote viewing program, which is Operation Stargate. Okay, really interesting. And guys, the list just keeps going on. And then that's the CIA. Okay, and I've got a book. Do I have it here? There's a book I recommend everybody read. It's by Victor Marchetti called CIA and the Cult of Intelligence.
Yes.
And he had an interesting statement in there where he was basically saying there exists within the hierarchy of the CIA a secret cult that has a particular, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. And lo and behold, I was doing this presentation and working on these notes. And then I was watching a show, I'm trying to remember the name of the show. And it was a female character. She was a CIA operative, and she was speaking about how she can't tell anybody about her job, and there's certain protocols they have to take in the CIA. And she said the CIA in this show, it's on Netflix, I'll get to the name, but she said the CIA is like a holy order. You do not violate the rules. And she said that specifically in the show. It's like a holy order. And it's funny that in the shows they'll leak little bits, right? Yeah. And when you get into the Jesuits, the history of the Jesuits, Dulles himself was trained by Jesuits. He said the CIA became what it was because we learned from the Jesuits. They're the most powerful intelligence agency on the earth. You know who else said that? Adolf Hitler. And he said, I've learned a great deal from the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, blah, blah, blah. So there's the Vatican connection. There's the trirennium, the Triple Crown, the fact that the world is governed by essentially 3 city-states, Washington, D.C., which is the District of Columbia, which is not a part of the organic Constitution or the United States of America. That's the military branch of this agenda. Yep. You have the Vatican City, which is called the brain. All right. And it is the second, or I guess to be the chief. And then you have London City, or the city of London. Yeah. In England, which I've actually been to physically, and it's got over. Oh, I actually went into the city of London. I went on the train. You get off, and it's a big giant. No, she can go in, but there's like a ritual. There's a ritual they have to do to. Permission, yeah. It's like it's more just for show. Yeah, but you get on the train in the UK, you get to the city of London stop, you get out, and this is the banking district, okay? And all these city-states I mentioned, DC, Vatican, London City, they're all cities within cities. They have their own laws, their own police, their own judicial system, etc. And they're all owned by the same people. And in there's over 300 of the world's biggest banks. The Bank of Rothschild is right there with all kinds of gargoyles and weird shit all over it. And then when you get off the stop, it's a Templar cross and a massive dragon. Yep. Okay. This gets into the serpent bloodlines, the whole ancient, like symbolism is very powerful. And it's not coincidence that the same symbols keep showing up all over the place when you're talking about these people, because they are very much obsessed with this symbolic communication and the fact that they have to tell us through symbolism. And they believe if you're too stupid to see that we've been telling you this whole time, everything we're doing to you through the media, through Hollywood, through all these symbols, then you deserve what you get. That's how they think.
And sorry to interrupt you there. The City of London, for those that are looking that up, this is an imperative thing to look up, the three corporate cities. In the Bank of England, in the basement, which is in the City of London, apparently there's a Mithraean site where it's built upon. Right there, you kind of see a throwback to ancient religions and how that fits into the occult.
They're very much into the cult of Mithras and those Roman cults, the cult of Dionysus, that kind of shit, right? Yeah. And that's interesting. Like, so basically put it all together. And another thing that I tell people to understand is that your government is in debt. The government that you think that you're electing, that's just people like your next door neighbor. Like if you think Justin Trudeau is just like your next door neighbor, I don't know what to tell you. Castro's son, or but these guys are selected puppets by the people that own the debt of your country. Because think about how the hierarchy really works. If your government, which is supposed to be made up of people just like you, but we know it isn't, if your government is in debt, meaning your country is in debt, meaning you are in debt, who are we all in debt to? Who are all the countries of the world in debt to? We're in debt to the people that print and own the money. This is what gets into that banking question that you had. It's so important to understand
Really
Federal Reserve, Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, etc. Like I can tell you in Canada, it was between 1974 and 76, where Canada stopped printing its own money using the Bank of Canada.
That's right.
And under Pierre Elliott Trudeau,
Yep.
we sold off our banking rights to the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland.
Well,
You want to know who founded Switzerland? It's right on the flag, my friends. The Holy Order of the Templars, the world's first international bankers of the world.
yes.
And so you have two. So if you look at the Vatican as the head of the Hydra, and they don't just run Christianity, that's bullshit. They run all these religions, okay? These are arch Luciferians that run that place, all right? They have two military orders that work with them, okay? And it's the Templars on one side, which I'm not talking physical knights here. The physical knights are a different story from what we call the clerics or the Cistercian monks that were the ones that were the keepers of the wealth of the Templars and of the hidden occult knowledge that they gleaned in the Middle East during their crusades. And so you have the Templar faction, which is it's still a modern ancient cult today. And then you have the Hospitaller faction, which was the Holy Knights of the Hospitallers, who built hospitals and hostels, and they are the medics, okay? And this is where you're going to get the history of the modern medical industrial complex, but you need to know how these things work. So history would tell you there was actually battles that happened between the Templars and the Hospitallers, and there was splits between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, and it's all these divisions are surface level. What we're dealing with is on one day, these groups will fight each other like mafias over turf, and another day they'll shake hands in order to secure their own enterprise, right? Mm-hmm. So the Templars that's where you get international banking, and that's where you get law. Mm-hmm. That's the law and the banking. So the legal system with the cult of Saturn and the black robes and the whole thing, the 3 gavel hits and the 3 stairs with the judge with the black robes of Saturn. That's all ancient stuff that comes out of Babylon, Greece, Rome, Egypt. And that's the legal and financial side of the Vatican operation. Then you have the hospital level, and the Hospitallers, they were actually from an ancient cult that became the Knights Hospitallers. They derived their whole lineage and their whole ideology from a cult that was more ancient than them in the medieval period. So they evolved into the Knights Hospitallers, were kind of turned into a specific arm of the military wing of the Vatican. And then later they morphed into what we now call the Knights of Malta, because they had to move to Malta. And so the Knights of Malta, the Knights of Malta, they actually sit to this day, they sit on the United Nations as a nation of their own. The Knights of Malta are a country that's how they're looked at. They sit on the United Nations. They sit well above. They're like an advisory philanthropist, peace, love, and light. We're just helping kids in Africa and providing. And they do a lot of good in the world because they're human resource managers on behalf of the real managers, the real farmers, okay? Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about the David Rockefellers and we talk about the George Bushes and we talk about all these figures, even George Soros and Bill Gates, the World Health Organization with the ancient serpent symbolism and the whole deal, you need to understand that there's levels above that. So when we're here and we're like, oh my God, Bill Gates, he's this eugenicist that wants to kill everybody. He's not operating on his own. Are you kidding me? Right. He belongs to an ideology. He belongs to a cult. Okay. And the real people that run, he might even be ignorant to a lot of what he's doing, but the real people at the top, that's who I'm interested in. Yep. Who finances it? Yep. Who creates it? Yep. Who perpetuates it? Who organizes it? How does this really work? Well, guys, all these questions that I'm sort of posing to you and all these subjects, this is the subject matter I'm going to be opening up with in my new series, Cult of the Medics, because
Can't wait.
I want to get into the Rockefeller medicine.
Yeah.
I want to get into big pharma.
Yeah.
I want to get into the pandemic and how this shit all happened, because it didn't just start yesterday. But I don't want to just stop there. In this series, I'm going to go to the tippy top of that pyramid to find out who's really pulling the strings, or at least I'm going to give my best shot at it. And the good thing about this series is that this is something you can participate in. I'm not sitting there giving you all these authoritative declarative statements. I'm going to present all the notes that I've gathered, all the information that I have, and I'm going to be like a DJ, and I'm going to remix these episodes to put this information together in a way that might help give greater perspective on how we got to this level of corruption that we're in right now. What's the real story with the depopulation stuff and the Georgia Guidestones? What's really about? What is that? Is all this stuff just something that happened after World War II with the Nazi Operation Paperclip, bring all the scientists in and then they found all these medical institutions? Or did this start in the ancient past? Is there nothing new under the sun? And then I'm even going to blow everybody's mind with a bonus chapter, which is kind of one of those things that I'm telling people for this chapter, just keep this on the back burner as a possibility, as a exploration. And this is where I'm going to bring in the paranormal, otherworldly element to all this and ask the question that Charles Fort, the great Charles Fort, asked. He was a paranormal researcher and investigator in like the, I think, late 1800s, 1900s.
Charles Fort.
And he made a statement. And I kind of open up in my trailer for this series, I open up with a statement from him where he says, I think we're property. Yep. I think that someone owns this earth, all others warned off. And he goes into this whole explanation of the fact that he thinks we're living on a farm and that there are farmers and that we're managed like livestock on the farm for the purpose that we humans use farms for, which is to use animals for resources. So what if we're not, us average folk, us little guys, aren't the top of the food chain? What if we are being, I'm not saying this is our destiny or our natural state. This is just what's happened to us, which is why we're here, which is that what if we're dealing with a human management team that either looks at itself as separate from the human family, just as a viewpoint. They just think, oh, we got better bloodlines. We're the intellectuals of the world. We're the most rich. We're the best. Or are we even dealing with humans at the end of the day? Is this really just human greedy bankers sitting around some round table? Or are they just the McDonald's managers for something that either doesn't perceive itself to be human or isn't itself human in the way we think of it? So that'll be kind of a bonus little, let's bring the paranormal question in here, because I don't think all these things are just isolated things. I think in the end, we got to start putting the big puzzle together.
Are you going to be getting into some, a couple of names came to mind, but one was John Coleman, Committee of 300, a lot of what you're saying there. And, and as far as what you just finished off with, oh my God, now you open a whole new fucking thing, but I'm not going to try to go down that rabbit hole right now.
Let's save it. I'll tell you what, I'll tell you, Mano, I'm going to do, I just wanted to drop a hint. When I release these episodes, if you'll have me back, 100%. I can kind of help go through some of those little details, and you can give me feedback when you get to see it. I'm going to drop the trailer in 10 days. I've worked really hard on this, and I'll be editing like a madman. I'm doing it all. I've researched it, produced it, edited it, putting it out. I'm going to put it out for free. I'm just going to maybe put a little donation thing there if people feel they want to contribute. But I'm putting this out for free. This is a project that I think the timing is going to be perfect, because it's going to get like the first episode we get into Dr. John Coleman, Committee of 300, the Club of Rome. And then we're going to keep unraveling it. And the type of notes that I have, this project has been the one project I've done that has intimidated the hell out of me. And I'll tell you why. It's so big. It's so massive. I have so many notes from brilliant, brilliant minds that the responsibility that I have to try to do justice to this is immense. So I'm just going to try to do my best job of doing this. And I have a feeling this will go big, and this will be something that will be ongoing, where I can even come back in the future and revise things and correct things as we learn more. And as I hear feedback from people that I know, people are going to send me information that they have. And I want this to be collaborative. I don't want this to just be me saying that. I want to be like, guys, let's research this and figure it out together. We're so divided right now. I need help with this. So I'm going to give you my take, and then I want to hear what you guys got, and let's figure this out, and let's crack this case and figure out what kind of what kind of cockroaches are scurrying around under our floorboards that we just don't know are there. We need to know they're there if we're going to purge it. You know what I mean?
100%. Dave, I really want to thank you for doing this, man. Like, honestly, I could keep going for hours, but I know you got like, you
Same
have a
here, man.
life,
This is
you have a
fun.
life, you know, you got to get out there and like live that life.
Thank
But
you.
honestly, brother, you have no idea what this means to me, to have you as my very first guest. It makes sense. It kind of, for me, it kind of brings a lot of things together. And I'm really happy that you're the first guest that I've had on this show. And
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you,
anytime,
man. It was a blast. And you know what, Manuel? I just talking to you. I know you're a real deal. You're very sincere. You know a lot about this. So thank you for starting this podcast. We need as many people out there doing it. And if there's anything I can do to support you, let me know.
thank you, brother. And anytime you need any help as well, whatever I could do, I might even write you a song, man.
Dude, that'd be sick. I'd be honored.
Okay, tell everybody, because I really want your name out there as much as possible,
Thank you.
because everything you've done up until now is not easy, both on a personal level, and I'm sure the time that you've put into everything, it needs to be seen, it needs to be heard. And one thing I love about Dave, the Truth Warrior, the Way of the Truth Warrior, as well as the Unslaved podcast, is like they put in so much time, and you really know it when you look at the end notes. They break it down, they give you links, research. They really put it in your hands. You can do as much or as little as you want, because the names that they give you after every episode, it's an education, man. It's a fucking institution, and that's how I look at what you guys are doing. It can't be easy.
No,
There are people out here
but it's worth it.
that 100%. And we all want to thank you as one of your listeners. I'm telling you, man,
Oh,
thank you
thank
for what
you.
you do,
Thank
dude.
you. Means a lot.
And if you're ever in Ontario or in Toronto, and hopefully this shit we find a way out of this bullshit, I want to come out to BC. I want to see you in person one day, my friend.
I'd love to, man. And hey, Toronto was my old stomping grounds, so I've been watching closely.
Yeah.
I got lots of family and friends there, so yeah,
nice.
definitely going to happen. And love to meet you someday as well. And just thank you for giving me this platform, and thanks to everybody for listening. And just everything I've said, go fact check me, get into it, learn about it, come to your own conclusions. I'm not here to be the authority. Let's just try to figure this out, because for me, the goal is freedom, truth, and justice. And no matter what our opinions are about anything,
yes, sir,
truth wins in the end.
100%. I'm going to put in all your links and stuff on the bottom. I'm going to leave it right there.
Yes, I'll send you my links. Just really quickly, the two websites to find everything. It even links to all the social media platforms I'm on. I'm always DW Truth Warrior on my platforms. But if you go to dwtruthwarrior.com, that's where you can find my site. I'm almost finished the Cult of the Medics website. That'll probably be up by the time this airs. So that would be at cultofthemedics.com. More information on that series as it comes out will be released there. And then unslaved.com. It's the education of a lifetime. And I think it's one of the most advanced research-based podcasts that are out there. And yeah, I'm probably biased, but I'm sticking to that.
No, I can back that shit up. Do it. I'm really picky. I'm really picky when it comes to information.
And you should be.
Like, I'm gonna ask about it. Like, yeah. Anyways,
good man.
Again, Dave, thank you so much for everything that you do. Make sure you send me those links. I'll make sure I get that word out there about everything Dave. And I'll see you next time, my friend. Have a good one, brother.
You as well.